Hello readers, this is Mrs. Harding, and today I'm going to read aloud to you an excerpt from the book Dragon Wings. And I would love for you to have a copy of your book with you so that you can follow along with me. The most important thing for you to do, though, is to be listening for Moon Shadow's point of view about what happened after the San Francisco earthquake, and make sure you're taking notes about that in your ELA notebook. Right below this video, there is a graphic organizer for you that you can recreate in your ELA notebook to help you organize your thoughts and evidence you find in the book. Or you can do it a different way. The main objective is that you get some really good quality notes down in your ELA notebook. You will be allowed to use those on our end of unit assessment. And the end of unit assessment is directly about this question, about what is Moon Shadow's point of view of the what happens right after the earthquake. And you'll be comparing that to the eyewitness account that we read together and analyzed together in a few lessons ago, also about the San Francisco earthquake. So those lessons and this one are going to be vital to help prepare you for the test, and you are allowed to use your notes. So please take good quality notes while I'm reading aloud to you. You can also rewatch this recording and take notes then. If you want to follow along once and then listen again and take notes during a second time, that would probably be the best practice to do. But either way, make sure you've paused this video and that you're ready with your book and your notebook and something to write with nearby, and you're ready to record what is Moon Shadow's point of view of the aftermath, which means what happens immediately after the San Francisco earthquake in his experience. And we're going to be starting at the bottom of page 198, and we will read through page 204. Mercifully, for a moment, it was lost to view in the cloud of dust that rose up. The debris surged against Miss Whitwell's fence and toppled it over with a creak and a groan and a crash. I saw an arm sticking up from the mound of rubble, and the hand was twisted at an impossible angle from the wrist. Coughing, Father pulled at my arm. "Stay here now," he ordered, and started for Miss Whitlaw's. I turned. Her house was still standing, but the tenement house to the left had partially collapsed. The wall on our side and part of the front and back had just fallen down, revealing the apartments within. The laundry hanging from lines, the old brass beds, and a few lucky, if astonished, people still looking out dazedly on what had once been walls. I could see Jack sitting up in the bed with his two brothers. His mother and father were standing by the bed holding on to Macy. Their whole family crowded into a tiny 2-room apartment. Then they were gone, disappearing in a cloud of dust and debris as the walls and floor collapsed. Father held me as I cried. Miss Whitlaw came out onto her porch in her nightdress and a shawl. She pulled the shawl tighter around her shoulders. "Are you all right?" "Yes," Father said, patting me on the back. "Aren't we, Moon Shadow?" "Yes." I wiped my eyes on my sleeves. "Is everyone okay inside?" Father asked Miss Whitlaw. She nodded. We joined her on the porch and walked with her into her house. Robin was sitting on the stairs that led up to the second floor. She huddled up, looking no longer like the noisy, boisterous girl I knew. The front door was open before her. She must have gone outside to look. "Just about the whole street's gone." From up the stairs we could hear the querulous old voices of the boarders demanding to know what had happened. Miss Whitlaw shouted up the stairs, "Everything's all right." "Are you sure?" Father asked quietly. Miss Whitlaw laughed. "From top to bottom, Papa always built well. He said he wanted a house that could hold a herd of thunderous elephants. That was what he always called Mama's folks. He never liked them much." "It's gone," Robin repeated. "Just about the whole street's gone." "Oh, really now?" Miss Whitlaw walked past Robin. We followed her out the front door to the front porch. Robin was right. No one had constructed the houses along the street as well as Miss Whitlaw's father had built his. A strange, eerie silence hung over the city. The bells had stilled in the steeples, and the houses had stopped collapsing momentarily. It was as if the city itself were holding its breath. Then we could hear the hissing of gas from the broken pipes, like dozens of angry snakes, and people trapped inside the mounds began calling. Their voices sounded faint and ghostly, as if dozens of ghosts floated over the rumble, crying in little distant voices for help. Robin and I pressed close together to one another for comfort. It was Miss Whitlaw who saved us. It was she who gave us something important to do and brought us out of the shock. She pressed her lips together for a moment as if she were deciding something. "We must get those people out." It would take 4 of us weeks to clear tunnels for them, Father said. We'll draft help. After all, we were put on this earth to help one another, Miss Whitlaw said. Father suppressed a grin. I see what we can do, but better put on clothes. What? Oh, my! Miss Whitlaw was suddenly horrified to be found in her nightgown in public. Come, Robin. She took her by the hand and practically pulled her up the steps. Father shook his head affectionately. He sat down on a chest in the hall, and he and I began braiding up his queue. On his advice, we both pinned our queues into tight buns at the back of our heads. When we got outside the house, though, Father stopped. I've put my boots on the wrong feet. Sure enough, he had his left foot on his right foot and vice versa. We both laughed a little louder than the joke actually deserved, but we were just so relieved that we were still alive after the disaster. Father sat down on the sidewalk and got his boots on right. He stood up, stamping his feet back into his boots. Then we looked around. We had gone to sleep on a street crowded with buildings, some 3 or 4 stories high and crowded with people, and now many of the houses were gone, and the ones that remained were dangerously close to falling too. There was a hole in the cobblestone street about a yard wide and 20 feet long. As we watched, a cobblestone fell over the edge, clattering 10 feet to the bottom. I heard one person compare it to being on the moon. It was that kind of desolate feeling, just looking at huge hills of rubble, of brick and broken wooden slats that had once been houses. On top of the piles, we would see the random collection of things that had survived the quake. Somebody's rag doll, an old bottle, a fiddle, the back of an upholstered chair, and a woman's slender wrist sticking out of the rubble as if calling for help. And then the survivors started to emerge, and I saw that there were as many hurt in mind as in body. Some people wandered out of buildings almost naked, others still in their night clothes. I saw one man with the lather on one side of his face, the other side already clean-shaven. In his hand was a lather-covered razor. One woman in a nightgown walked by carrying her crying baby by its legs as if it were a dead chicken. Father caught her by the shoulder and gently took the baby from her. Fix her arms, Father told me. I set her arms so that she could cradle the baby as if the mother were a doll. Then Father put the baby back into her arms. She dumbly nodded her thanks and wandered on. Other people who had taken time to dress had dressed in the oddest things, choosing things they wanted to save rather than what would be appropriate for disaster. I saw one shop girl go by in a ball gown with ruffles sounding crisp in the morning air. Perhaps she had saved for a year to buy it, I don't know. But I saw another man in formal tails go by. His wife carried the baby while he pushed a baby carriage filled with jewelry, a frying pan, and a candelabrum. Then along came a big healthy man with ginger whiskers. He had slipped his trousers on over his red long johns. In his arms he had a chest. Father tried to stop him. Please, need help. Father pointed to the mound behind us, from which the ghostly voices were calling. Be off with you, said the man. Father tried grabbing him by his blue suspenders, but the man dodged away and started running. We tried to get other survivors to help. 1 or 2 came out of their daze and started to work on the mound, clearing rocks and broken boards again, but most of them ignored Father and went on their way as if they were made of stone. Some even cursed him. Then Miss Whitlaw and Robin joined us. Both of them were in clean dresses, with their hair braided and coiled around their ears. You would have thought they were going to church. Please, help us save the others, Miss Whitlaw said to 2 sturdy young men, but they were in a hurry pushing their wheelbarrow. Out of the way, you old bat! Well, sniffed Miss Whitlaw as they trundled past. You Sunday Christians, she called after them as if it were the worst thing she could think of. She stood for a moment in the street, fingering the ends of her shawl. Then she turned around with a determined set to her jaw. Mr. Lee, I think we are going to have to use a more forceful argument than moral persuasion. With that, she marched back into her house. Okay, so we're going to stop there, and I just want you to think about what was Moonshadow's experience right after the San Francisco earthquake. So take some time now after listening to this and following along to write down notes of what his experience was, what his point of view was, what did he see and feel and think right after the earthquake. And then look through your copy of the book and write down just a few words or sentences or phrases to show evidence from the book about your thinking. So if there's a certain emotion that you think he felt, then find something in the book that shows that. Or if you remember a certain thing that he saw or he was trying to do, write that down and then find in the book where it shows that and write down that evidence in your ELA notebook. Remember, you will get to use those notes on the test. All right, let's continue on, writers and readers.